a lot of couples go by those venue recommendation lists to find their vendor team. And it's really, really important to have this equality minded conversation with every single vendor on your list. Because if you were to have an LGBTQ plus couple, heaven forbid you give them a list of floral designers to work with and they're refused service.
Mm.
It still happens. People may not realize it happens, but it still very much happens.
I think it's a really, really good perspective. When thinking about different parts of the country, right? Because with venues, with vendors at different parts of the country, there may be more of a um, traditionally, and I'll say traditionally conservative environment. When a business owner is thinking about making these decisions, do you think it is um, fair or realistic, maybe, depending on where you are in the country, to do this without losing business, or should that not even be a consideration because of what's at stake here?
I think it's you should do it. Like if you're losing business because you are trying to be inclusive, then are those the type of clients that you want? And like I said, with the younger generations, like inclusivity is in them. Like it's part of how they grew up and it's important to them. So, you don't have quite as much backlash with the younger generation as you would with, you know, even older than millennials. If you did service like a baby, a boomer generation, that's a different conversation. And I think then yes, you might receive backlash and you have to obviously, do what makes sense for your business. So I am always for going the inclusivity route.
Totally.
But this is something that I think it's not going to go away and it's only going to get more so.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's an interesting place to be in the world and just timing right now, because you do have, I think, this boomer generation that didn't have those options and wasn't as educated about all of this. Now we have these newer generations that are coming up and they are expecting it. They are, looking for that, to your point, like you said. But then a lot of times you have the boomers who are paying for some of it, right? And who are helping. So we're in this interesting mix time where the dollar flow may not always be coming from the couples, but yet the values are there for the couples. The values are different for the boomers, but they're paying, right? So education seems to be really, really important, again, to like not only what we're doing here, but also the different venues.
And I think
Um,
it's important to say, like, what's the harm? What's the harm of having two equally sized getting ready rooms? What's the harm in calling it a getting ready room or a prep suite? Like, there's no, someone's not going to not book your venue because it's not called a bridal suite. And
mhm.
if they really want to call it a bridal suite themselves, like, by all means, like, let them call it a bridal suite. Change the contract for them if it's that important to them. But no one's going to say, wow, I don't want to sign on the dotted line of this venue because they don't call their room a bridal suite. So there's no harm in doing it, but there could be
There's no
harm.
downside, but there's huge upside.
Right,
I totally
exactly.
understand. Definitely. So with other things, what other blind spots do we have as venue owners, as wedding operators? You said the bridal suite, right? Getting ready room,
Getting
wedding
ready room.
suite, things like that. And I guess that would go for the groom suite as well,
Right.
right? So any specific gender terms like that, what do you think about? Are there other blind spots that maybe we are missing?
I always also recommend for venues specifically gender neutral bathrooms,
Okay.
because if the couple themselves aren't LGBTQ plus, they may very well have guests who are, and you know, whether they fall, wherever they fall on the spectrum, on the gender identity spectrum, you want to make sure that they are comfortable. And so bathrooms are a huge space that do feel unsafe for those, particularly in the transgender community. So I always recommend gender neutral bathrooms. also another place that I see a lot with venues is their recommendation list. A lot of couples go by those venue recommendation lists to find their vendor team. And it's really, really important to have this equality minded conversation with every single vendor on your list. Because if you were to have an LGBTQ plus couple, heaven forbid you give them a list of floral designers to work with and they're refused service.
Mm.
It still happens. People may not realize it happens, but it still very much happens. I, for Love Inc., because we do feature hetero weddings, I personally reach out to every single vendor before publishing a wedding or a style shoot to confirm their equality mindedness. So I'm seeing, more than I would like to see, these responses back saying, no, I do not work with same-sex couples. And not even, I'm not even talking like rural America. I'm talking in the Northeast, in big cities, San Francisco, Portland, places that you even want to like assume are progressive. You still have these pockets of people who are discriminating against LGBTQ plus couples.
Mhm.
So it's really important to not assume that everyone is, even if you are in a big city, and have these conversations with vendors from your vendor list. And I recommend, if they are not, remove them from your vendor list. Do you want to send clients to some, even if they're hetero clients, like I said, these things are important to straight couples too,
Mhm.
um, to vendors who are not inclusive. So you really have to reevaluate that. And, while like I know
Are
this isn't on, diversity as a whole, but I also recommend venues make those lists diverse, get some BIPOC vendors on there. Um, you know, I think it's a huge conversation. And it's one of those things that I see way too often of, you know, vendor list, vendor recommendation lists from venues having just all white, hetero, cisgender vendors on there. And we want to really support those marginalized communities.